And welcome to another segment of Good Vibes. I'm Martin Falls, joined by Debbie Cox DeNova. She is our coach, transformational coach. We appreciate it. And let me ask you something, because you were talking on the Sports on the Bayou show today about alpha males in the locker room.
Yes.
So if somebody was watching and they're lacking the alpha spirit and they're trying to be the guy in the locker room, or a woman is trying to be the lady at the table who controls the table, how do you become more alpha?
Yes, I love this conversation so much. And a lot of this research comes from research on animals, which holds parallels to human behavior as well, specifically about chimpanzees. So a lot of the research comes from Frans de Waal, who is a primatologist who wrote a book called Chimpanzee Politics. And so if you are looking to become more alpha, and really let's define what alpha means, just in case you weren't watching Sports on the Bayou. The alpha is really like the leader of the group, the dominant, the person who has the most magnetism. They're confident. They like to take more responsibility. They're the peacemakers of the group, right? And in nature, what happens is there's one alpha. There's one male alpha and there's one female alpha. And if you want to take over the spot, then you have to go through a number of things. And it's not just a matter of, which was surprising to me, like beating your chest and calling for a battle of strength to take over the position. In fact, it's a coalition system when we're talking about chimpanzees and in humans. We are social beings, right? So you have the support, if you're a good leader, the support of your social group. That means that if someone wants to take over the alpha position, they need to gain the support of the coalition. And so it is a lot like politics in that they go about proving their worth, not only in strength, which is important, right? Being able to show that you have enough vigor, enough strength to take on the position. But there are three other things that we talked about on Sports on the Bayou: generosity. So you see a lot of politicians, right? Like holding babies up. It's like a show of like, I am good with children. And you're gaining the support of, you're ingratiating yourself really to the females. And that's what chimpanzees do as well. They tickle the babies of the females, right? They're very generous in spirit. They're empathetic because a good leader is someone who is highly empathetic. And throughout all animal studies, because they've done some empathy studies on animals, you see more empathy in the females typically. Across the board, females are higher in empathy, except with the alphas. The alphas have to show more empathy because it is their role to be consoler of. So you think about politicians going to the sites of tragic things like earthquakes, right? And consoling the people, addressing the people whenever they're mourning. That's a really important role of an alpha. And then at the end of it also is peacemaking. So you see a lot of breaking up fights and being very impartial. A really, really good alpha is someone who can be a peacemaker and stay impartial even when someone is close to you, one of the people who's fighting is close to you, and usually come up for the underdog. And the reason why this is so important is because it shows that the alpha is providing security to the lowest ranking in the group. So with all of that said, then what are some of the characteristics of an alpha? And if you want more leadership in your life, let's just say that you just want to be someone who demonstrates more alpha qualities. Maybe you're not trying to take over anywhere. There are some things that demonstrate that you have the strength, the generosity, the empathy, and the peacemaking, and we can talk about some of those.
You know, while you were saying that, I was thinking about politicians that go to sites of disasters. I always love the politicians that go to the sites of the disasters and they don't call the press. And I'm in the press.
Yeah.
We find out about it and we go cover them.
Yeah.
But the ones that call you and go, look, I'm going to be in Dulac
Yeah.
at 2 o'clock. I'm going to be on Shrimpers Row at this point. I'm going to be in Dulord. Why?
They're showing those it's too demonstrative, right?
Yeah, right.
If it's true and it's something that you naturally do, it's much more impressive to us because it's authentic and it's genuine, and that's why we respond better in that way. But that is literally why. So there's both on the alpha's part, they're providing something for the community, but there is sort of something in it for them as well, right? Because the more they've shown that the more generosity, empathy, and peacemaking they can demonstrate, the stronger the support of their community this is very important because when you have strong support, it means that if someone challenges you, you're going to have the strength of the coalition behind you. Because the communities in chimpanzee world and also in human world, we don't like bullies. We don't like people who come in and just try to take over, right? Especially if it's somebody that's good for our community. And so when you create these strong bonds and you truly are empathetic and you truly are supportive and you make peace and you're good for the security of the lowest ranking, the whole entire community is going to back you up to keep your position. And once you are dethroned, so to speak, from the alpha position, the community will continue to take care of you. And this has been demonstrated through science as well. There was a famous chimpanzee named Amos. Amos became sick. Chimpanzees can spot sickness from a mile away, and the males came for him, and he was dethroned as the alpha. He became so sick that the primatologist had to put him off in his own little contained area, but left the door open so that the other chimps could get to him. And the sicker he got, what they found is that the females came with food, with wood wool, which is sort of like this thing that they sleep in. They would prop him up. They were taking care of him all the way into his older age, which is not often the case. A lot of times alphas, especially the ones who are acting like bullies, they don't meet such a great fate when their time is done.
They get killed.
They get killed. But if you're really, really good with your community, then even after you leave the alpha position, in a lot of different, they've shown that these older ex-alphas will actually have more influence than the current alpha in position.
We've seen that with parish presidents. They get in squabbles when they're parish president, but when they retire, they're the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. Yep.
We're talking about how people who want to become alphas, how do they do it? But isn't it a struggle? We had this talk at lunch today. You were involved in it. And people who grow up sort of shy, but they really want to get over the shyness. So they force themselves over it, and they learn how to do it, and they go through whole life speaking in public and learning how to do things and doing things. But that's really not who they were.
Yeah.
They made a transformation.
Absolutely. And this is very interesting because Bobby Hebert was mentioning that introverts aren't typically alphas. And while I understand his point, like we're talking about shy people typically are not the alphas, okay? But we have to make the distinction between extroverts, introverts, shy, and confident, right? Because alphas are always confident, but they're not always extroverts. They're not always the most talkative at the table. In fact, they typically control the pace of the conversation, but they can be very, what we talked about before, introverts are those who recharge on their own, and then extroverts charge by connecting to other people. So I used to be a painfully shy introvert. I still recharge on my own, but I trained myself to be more confident around people. So I'm an outgoing introvert, if you will, okay? And so this is very possible, and it's really important to note that in nature and with humans, you don't have to be the biggest, you don't have to be the strongest, you don't have to be the smartest, you don't have to be the most talkative and outgoing to be the alpha. Okay, so if you want, and all this research comes from Vanessa Van Edwards, Science of People, there are 8 cues that we can, to identify an alpha, and that you can actually hone at home to increase your alpha power, so to speak. The first one is congruent nodding. I say congruent nodding is basically emphasizing your words with a nod of your head, or if someone else is talking and you agree, that you nod. And what they found is that all alphas will do a lot of congruent nodding. It can be very subtle. It's not like, it doesn't have to be aggressive.
Right.
Just a subtle nod. But when I'm talking and if I'm making a point and I agree with my point, there's an emphasis with a head nod. If you're talking, I'm nodding, and it's been shown with research that when someone is nodding at you, you tend to speak 3 to 4 times longer. So it's sort of like
They're
supporting.
giving you approval.
They're giving you approval and support for what you're saying. So alphas use congruent nodding. They also do reassuring touch. So what they found through research is that alphas will touch themselves less. So we're talking about when we are feeling self-confident, we tend to touch, our neck, we bring our hands, we bring our body in, and we touch ourselves. Where alphas will touch themselves less and actually touch others more. So it's the reassuring touch, it's the reciprocal touch, it's the high five, it's that reaching out to someone to make them feel comfortable. So alphas use touch very intentionally. The third one is that they claim space. We've talked a lot about claiming space, right? So what we look for in confident, charismatic people is the space between the torso and the arms. So we want this space. So alphas tend to use the armrest like this. They tend to be the ones sitting back at the table with their arms spread out across a chair. legs are wide open whenever so they're basically claiming space, right? They're owning their space. We know that when people are feeling very self-conscious, they tend to shrink in. They tend to bring their body in as close as possible.
They get timid.
They get timid. Whereas a leader, a charismatic person, an alpha will open up their body language and basically signal that they're expecting good things in the world. Okay. The fourth thing is body openness. Again, an open body signals an open mind. It signals that you are expecting wonderful things to come to you. And we love that. We love to see somebody with an open body posture. It signals to us that this person is a positive person a capable person in the world. Okay. The fifth one is that they invite others to participate. So again, we were talking about how the alpha doesn't necessarily have to be the one who talks the most, but in a conversation, what you will notice is that they will control the flow of the conversation. So they will actually notice when someone is not speaking up, and they will invite the person to participate in the conversation. So what do you think, Martin, right? If they notice that someone is being left out, they bring them in. If someone's talking too much, they'll control the flow of the conversation, and that's usually the role of the alpha in conversation. They use variable tone and volume. So if you ever listen to somebody who's charismatic and confident with their voice, they get really loud to emphasize certain things, and even sometimes they get really soft when they're trying to emphasize
So
something.
you have to listen.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So there's this dynamic quality to the way that they talk. There are some ups, there are some downs, and this is really engaging, and it brings people in. It magnetizes people to the message that's being spoken. So a lot of variability, a lot of dynamic. They gaze more. So we already know that alphas, leaders, they use eye contact more, but what they found is that they gaze more at the end of a sentence, so or a statement. So they'll maybe be talking down like this, but at the very end, they look up at the person that they're talking to, so they can see what the feedback is, whether they're receiving it or not. What is their?
I've noticed that.
Yeah, so it's not always like a staring contest, right? Like where they're locking in eyes and they're not letting go. But they do gaze more, and especially at the end of those statements. And then the eighth one is more hand gestures, but they're purposeful. Again, underlining and bolding what they say. This lessens the cognitive load. When I'm saying something and I'm saying it's a big idea, and my hands are saying big with me, then we actually put more weight on what the hand gestures are doing versus what I'm saying. So if I said this is a big idea, you'd be looking at my hand and going, but it's small, right? Because my hands are more trustworthy than my voice. So good hand gestures are something that alphas use as well.
And this is a topic as we close that Coach Brian Gano's going to love, because he was a Dale Carnegie instructor.
Yes, he was.
And he'll be wide open. All right, Debbie, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to have Debbie back next week, same place, same time, for another topic. What it is, I don't know yet. So we'll see you again next week on Good Vibes.